The world of men is ending.
Hello you, Johnny from Eurogamer here, and I am rather excited about Middle-earth Shadow of War. Yes, we're still a ways off from the gameplay reveal, and the only stuff we've seen has come from a CGI trailer. And yes, CGI trailers can be spectacularly misleading, but there's still enough detail tucked into the Shadow of War reveal trailer to indicate some pretty interesting stuff is about to go down in Mordor. I've had a good dig through the reveal trailer, the website, and a couple of online communities in fact, all in order to bring you 9 new things in Middle-earth Shadow of War. Be warned before we begin though, hefty spoilers ahead for the previous game, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Number 1, actually going to war. Right, so Shadow of War is a super generic title for a sequel, but it's nonetheless a very exciting declaration of intent. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor was excellent, but it was really the story of one man's guerrilla campaign against a huge occupying force. Unless you took the time to painstakingly brand a whole bunch of Uruks, you were mostly going it alone. Shadow of War, meanwhile, seems very keen on putting a big force at your back. A lot of the official information and promo material around Shadow of War specifically talks about forging your own army. And it's a good thing too, because from the looks of the ranks lined up here, Talion would have a pretty hard time taking them on single-handed. Whether you build this army by branding masses of enemies or by rallying human enemies behind you remains to be seen, but with Sauron himself returning to Mordor and mustering a colossal force, the scale of Shadow of War on the whole seems far greater than its predecessor. So yeah, Shadow of War gives you the chance to build an army. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether it's one worthy of Mordor though. Number 2, a new Ring of Power.
A ring of power.
Carrying on from where Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor left off, the announcement trailer for Shadow of War sees Talion and Celebrimbor forging a new Ring of Power right in the heart of Mount Doom. Now, working on the assumption Talion actually gets to keep this ring for the duration of the game, that surely has to mean an expanded set of powers, right? I mean, it's a Ring of Power for crying out loud. The last one of those to be made plunged the entirety of Middle-earth into chaos, twice if you count the events of Lord of the Rings, which in Talion's timeline obviously haven't happened yet. Granted, Talion's Ring of Power could be on a level akin to, say, the ones held by the elves, dwarves, or men, but either way, these are hugely powerful artifacts. And with that in mind, it would be pretty disappointing not to see some new abilities come out of it. There are also the story implications to consider. At the end of Shadow of Mordor, Talion announces the need for a new ring and his eyes start glowing, which is pretty sinister. The One Ring is also famously good at corrupting mortals, and if the trailer is anything to go by, this new ring is pretty powerful. Is it a corrupting influence? That remains to be seen, although the Elvish inscription suggests possibly not. It's different to the script on Sauron's ring, and according to one person on the subreddit, it reads, "I will redeem the land of shadow." Take that one with a pinch of salt though, because I can't read Elvish, so I wasn't actually able to corroborate that. And oh look, there's Gollum. Either way, it's very exciting, although can we take a second to talk about the decision to forge the ring right there in the middle of Mount Doom? I mean, you clip that thing once on the edge, and bloop, it's going straight in the fire. That is exactly what I'm talking about. You nearly lost it then, Talion. Number 3, Drake riding. The beasts in Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor were a treat. Riding a Caragor across the map and using it to maul your enemies to death never really got old, and it seems like this sort of behaviour is also getting a bump for Shadow of War. There's nothing that explicitly points to it in the trailer, but take a look at the fist-bitingly expensive Mithril edition of Shadow of War, and you'll see that it comes with a statue of Talion riding a drake. You know, the great winged things the Nazgul ride around on. Now, this likely means one of two things. Either you can ride drakes around the place in Middle-earth Shadow of War, or someone has seriously misjudged that statue and is giving everybody false ideas. We'll wait and see on that one, but it is very interesting nonetheless. If you can ride a drake about the place, just how big is this map going to be? Now, the more observant among you will have realised I've been talking about this statue for a little while now without even acknowledging the thing the drake is fighting. This then would be a pretty good time to move on to point 4. Number 4, a Targaroth Balrog. Keeping in line with the bigger is better approach Shadow of War seems to be taking, there's a Balrog in the announcement trailer, which is frankly slightly terrifying. There's also a cave troll, if you're a fan of those. Now, not that I'm doubting Talion's abilities or anything, but a Balrog seems like a pretty big challenge for just one man. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one goes down, to be honest, because it's pretty intimidating. It's worth noting the Mithril Edition statue specifies this is a Targaroth Balrog, by the way. Whether that means anything in particular gameplay-wise remains to be seen, but it's a nice bit of lore inclusion nonetheless. Number 5. Conquering Fortresses. This point is another gameplay element mentioned on the official website, although we're currently in the dark as to how extensive it is. The Shadow of War site mentions you can conquer fortresses and dominate Mordor from within, which suggests you should be able to hold bits of territory for yourself. After all, that new army of yours has to go somewhere. Now, presumably these fortresses, being fortresses, aren't going to be easy to take in the first place, which suits me down to the ground. Admittedly, I'm a sucker for map control mechanics like this, so fingers crossed it forms a good chunk of the game. Being able to upgrade fortresses would be pretty great, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Number 6. More Nemesis. The main reason Shadow of Mordor was so compelling was the excellent Nemesis system. Taking Uruks and giving them not just personality, but memory was really special. Getting killed by an enemy only to have them taunt you about it later on made them feel like living, breathing adversaries.
You! These scum are no better than Tarks like you, and I will show everyone here how low that is.
Of course, the Nemesis system is making a return, and the website promises updates for Shadow of War, including a new orc tribe full of characters to dismember. Hopefully this won't be the only addition to the system, but either way, it'll be nice to have some new arch nemesis to obsess over. Number 7. New Friends. While we're talking about fresh faces coming to Mordor, the trailer lingers quite a bit on these two Gondorian soldiers. Not long enough that they couldn't be killed in the game's opening cinematic, mind you, but long enough to leave me wondering whether they might have a part to play in the main story. Again, it hinges on whether that army of Talions is made up of humans or branded Uruks, but then the website does mention new allies, so who knows? The only Gondorian you got to interact with in Shadow of Mordor, after the game's opening of course, was the former Ranger Hergon, so hanging out with a few people still actively serving would be pretty cool. Number 8. One notably missing friend. And those soldiers of Gondor are nice, sure, but what's happened to Celebrimbor? He's quite happy at the start of the trailer, being part of Talion, swinging his hammer, but once the Ring of Power is forged, this swirling black mist appears and seems to spirit him away.
Celebrimbor!
He's completely absent from the rest of the trailer, so my question is, where's he gone? We know from the end of Shadow of Mordor that Celebrimbor is vulnerable to a ritual or two, so is that what's going on here? Will Talion be reunited with his Wraith friend, and if not, how on Middle-earth is respawning supposed to work? Lots of questions, very few answers, but either way it seems like Talion's relationship with Celebrimbor is being shaken up a bit. Number 9. The Nine. Why yes, I am delighted that I could make this the 9th bullet point, thank you very much for asking. If the Drakes, the Shrieking, and of course the shout of Wraiths didn't tip you off already, the Nazgul are in Shadow of War in some capacity. Interestingly, the close-up we get of one of the Ring Wraiths shows it sporting this rather natty face grill thing. It's a stark contrast to the helm belonging to the Witch King of Angmar, which has kind of become an iconic look. It's a minor detail, but an encouraging one nonetheless. And there you have it, 9 new things in Middle-earth Shadow of War. Are there any I've missed? If you have any burning thoughts or questions on Shadow of War, feel free to have at it in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, there are some others for you to check out on screen now. You could watch us play some classic games for the first time in Late to the Party, for instance, or have Chris tell you a charming story in Here's a Thing. There's also a subscribe button if you fancy giving that a tickle. No pressure, either way, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.